Good morning, everyone. This is Alok Pant. I'm CEO of Unvired, based in Houston, Texas. And I would like to welcome all of you who've joined our webinar today. During our webinar, our customer Failure Prevention Associates will be discussing the use of digital mobile forms to drive asset data collection and preventive maintenance. It is my pleasure to introduce our main speaker today, our customer, Dr. Karl Hoffower of Failure Prevention Associates. Dr. Hoffower, and I'll just go with Karl today, leads an asset inspection company called Failure Prevention Associates, FPA. They do a lot of reliability and preventive maintenance analysis. And one of Karl's focus areas is vibration analysis. He's an authority in this field, and he has customers all across the US and Middle East and other regions. Our second speaker today is Srini Subramanian. He's Chief Technology Officer at Unvired and is leading our digital forms product, and he will be doing a demo and take your questions. So real quick, before we dive into the webinar, some housekeeping items. You can submit your questions anytime using the Q&A box. We will take them at the end. And we have some special offers for all attendees today. We have a free proof of concept for the Unvired Turbo Forms application. All you need to do is give us a scanned copy of a paper form or a Word document or a spreadsheet, and we'll design it for you, and you can enter your data. And we're also having special discounts on pricing. And if you're interested, just contact us, and we'll anyway send you details on special pricing. So with that, let's quickly look at the agenda. We'll do some quick introductions. Then Karl will be talking about the need for predictive and condition-based maintenance, reliability. He'll talk about his pain problems, the solution he deployed, business benefits he has gained, and then we'll do a quick demo and take your questions. All right, I'm good. So about Unvired, so we are headquartered in Houston. We have customers in US, Canada, and all across the globe. We are a certified SAP partner, and here is a quick glimpse of our solutions. So we really focus on this area of asset management, field service, safety, and whether it is mobilizing the execution of work orders or doing inspections or work permit. That's what we do. We also do custom web and mobile apps, but our focus is really this whole area of asset management and safety. So we've got a fair share of recognition by leading analysts like Gartner, SAP, and other, I guess, organizations. So what are our key differentiators? Most importantly, we have happy reference customers. Karl is one of them, and he'll talk about his case study today. We have cost leadership. And the most important, I guess, differentiator from a customer perspective is we are very flexible and responsive. We like to listen to your requirements and deliver solutions. And again, safety, field service, asset management is our focus. But again, we don't want to talk too much about us today. It's about Karl. And I'm going to hand it over to Karl today. So Karl, if you can go over the next 10 slides and let the audience, share your experience with them. So over to you.
Sure, thanks. Well, good afternoon or morning, depending on where you are. So we're based in Houston, Texas. We do a lot of condition monitoring, so vibration analysis, thermal imaging, motor circuit testing. And our field services are centered around mainly improving the skills of how people use their equipment. So we do skill gap assessments and skill gap closure trainings, mainly in the greater Texas, Louisiana, Oklahoma, New Mexico region. But we do have clients all over the US, Canada, and the Middle East. But let's go to the next slide. So one of the things that we do is predictive maintenance and condition-based monitoring. And what we're trying to do is help people decrease costs so that they are not doing preventative maintenance tasks that don't need to be done. So we're trying to help our clients get information. We like to say that, we're going to give you knowledge so you can make decisions based on that information and not just based on what the calendar says. One of the things we've run into multiple times is when we're doing, let's say, vibration analysis, we're looking at about almost 20,000 vibration measurements a month. And so when there is an issue, and especially if there's a more complicated issue, we want to see some information about the machine. And because we have thousands of machines that we're responsible for, it's nice to be able to pull up a piece of information that has a photograph and has details about that asset. What kind of electric motor is it, or is it steam driven? What kind of connection or coupling does it have? Is there a gearbox? And then what is it driving? Is it driving a blower fan? Is it driving an agitator? Is it driving a pump? And then what kind of pump? Is it a single stage or multi-stage? So lots of information that we want to know. And our vibration analysis program doesn't always store all of that information. So we used to do it with paper. And as Alok and I jokingly say, you know, with all of the age of digital and the ability to have a huge volume of memory for a cheap price, we want to kill some paper. So, you know, by being able to make a better diagnosis of the problem, we can help our clients have better action planning. So when you look here, the graphic on the left, all those green dots, so those would be vibration sensors monitoring various equipment through a particular plant or a unit. And each one of those photographs there, we've got a motor driving a gearbox, we've got a motor driving a pump, and then the large picture on the far right is a 3-stage pump. And so a 3-stage pump acts and behaves differently than a single stage pump. So it's good to know what those things are. And it's difficult to remember when you have over 1,000 pieces of equipment, just exactly which piece of equipment that you're reviewing the data at. So consequently, when we go out to first collect data on an asset, you know, one of the things that we do is if we have specific information about what type of impeller is in that pump or how many blades are in that fan, you know, the graphic on the left gives you what an overall vibration meter or overall vibration sensor, like a 4 to 20 milliamp sensor would give you, which is just, it was vibrating at a low level, then it got worse, and then it got into a danger. And you say, well, what's going on? Well, you don't know if you're just using an overall vibration sensor. So what we do is we do some engineering calculations. We use a dynamic sensor, and using some special math formulas, we have the ability to take the asset data that we collected during our initial visit and apply engineering calculations to say, oh, these frequencies of these peaks match unbalance of that pump. Shows us that the pump is having some issue on the impeller, and that's where the vane pass is, or that a bearing is going bad. And that's one of the primary uses of vibration analysis, is to tell them not just the vibration has gotten worse or it's increasing, but what problem do you have? So you can plan your resources, you can plan your downtime appropriately. So in this, there's some various things that we can do much better diagnosis. So this slide is a great slide. It shows that, you know, different frequencies of different problems show up. So when we have a graph of based on frequency, we can see certain peaks match the gearbox, certain peaks match the bearings, certain peaks match alignment or the health of the motor. So, but you can't do these engineering calculations to figure out what these peaks are if you don't have the constants that are present in the machine. And the way you capture that is with a form. So what we needed was when we had these forms, we'd say, okay, well, they were in a box. And so, you know, you'd have to take those paper forms, go through the files and try to figure out which one was there. And now that we've been losing people, one of the things that's really a problem in all industries is what we call the silver tsunami. And the silver tsunami is gray-haired retirements are washing away knowledge, skills, and know-how. So, you know, lots of different organizations are researching this. Here's one quote from the Services Council, is that 50% of service organizations indicated they were facing a shortfall of skilled labor. So everyone is fearing the loss of institutional knowledge, or what we jokingly call tribal knowledge. And so one of the ways to capture this tribal knowledge is to have digital forms, have people in your workforce filling out, putting in information about the situation that they were in, how they diagnosed it, and how they resolved it. And so a digital form is a great way to start capturing that knowledge and putting it into a repository that you can actually take actions on. And I highly recommend that if you have people that are retiring, that you put them in front of, give them some digital forms so that they can start capturing the knowledge they have. Because once they leave, the ability for you to benefit from their knowledge starts to dwindle more and more and more. So let's go to the next slide. So what we did was to help us is because we don't have as many people as we used to, because paper forms aren't as actionable or easy to access, and just writing it down and then transferring that data from one medium to another takes more time. It's made it difficult to find things, made it difficult to work with. So us transitioning to a digital form was a great way to decrease the time it takes to collect the data, make action items off of it, create our engineering calculations for our vibration analysis, and then be able to reference back to those assets when we need to, when there's a situation going on. So let's go to the next slide there, because
Well, I was wondering, maybe if you can spend a minute more on, you and I have discussed how you've gone to plants and customers sometimes have no idea what their asset characteristics are. And so maybe you can, punctuate the need for this lack of data out there and
sure.
from your experience.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Just yesterday morning, we had a call with a reliability manager, and he wants us to come in to help them improve their program for reliability and condition monitoring. And my first question was, do you have a criticality list of your assets? And he said, no. I said, okay, do you even have an asset list? He goes, kind of. So we're being tasked with taking the list of names they have and going out and validating all the assets they have in the field, documenting their process, and then going through a matrix on criticality. Because when it comes to how you plan your maintenance, you have things that are critical and not so critical. So there's certain things that you want to be more proactive with, and other things that you have a certain amount of downtime that you can have with this asset taken offline before it affects production. And we understand everybody has a budget, everybody has product demands. You're all trying to produce X amount of product to meet the orders that your company has. So you can't always shut the machines down. So you have to prioritize your downtime, and by knowing the severity of the health of or an unhealthy condition, you can make appropriate decisions. So not having asset info seems to be something that's common because we've always relied in the past on the tribal knowledge of the people that worked in the plant. So in the industrial space, if you go in there, you have people in their 20s, a few people in their 30s, a lot of people in their 50s and 60s. And you have very few people in their late 30s through their 40s and early 50s that have a decade of experience at that site. Whereas that used to be the norm in the 90s. And so as this silver tsunami has grown and gotten worse and worse and worse, you need to do more with less. And one of the ways that we see this helping our clients is by digitally documenting their assets, putting down, as we take those assets and we have those digital forms, then we can build action item plans for what failure modes they detected, how we detected it, and how we resolved it. So they can use that going forward. And they can also use that between different plants. But it's a very difficult thing when you ask them, what criticality or what list do you have in your assets? And then when they tell you the name or number, well, what is it? And they go, I don't know, it's some sort of pump. And again, the characteristics of the machines are different. So from this asset list, we can also then look to see what kind of lubrication program do you have? Are you using different types of greases, and could you consolidate? Are you using different type of lubricating oil, and can you consolidate? But unless you have that data down and documented, it's hard to make a comparison.
Right. Now talk about your solution and your machine data sheet that you digitize.
Sure. So we've had this paper form for a long time, and it's a pretty common form. Lots of people have used it. We customized it a little bit to make it easier for us. But what was nice was I sent a copy of the paper form in. Unvired helped us digitize it, and within a week we had the form back, and then we started using it. And then from there, people started saying, hey, wouldn't it be nice if, like we used to take camera, you have to get permission, but you'd take a cell phone camera. Well, now we've got it built into the app. So instead of trying to correlate a digital form with a picture, we just added it right into the app. And that's one thing that's made working with Unvired a lot easier, is they're very responsive to our request to make something better and enhance it. So I don't even know which version we're on. I think we're past like our fifth or sixth version, but we've just enhanced it and enhanced it and enhanced it. But the nice thing is then we have this ability to not only refer to our forms, but because they're digital, we have the ability to extract that data and do some analytics on it. And that was something that I didn't think of. It was actually Alok who brought that up to me, that said, hey, you know, with all this stuff digitized, you can actually start extracting this and do some analytics on it, which was great. So this is a copy of the form. Let's go to the next slide. I think is a little bit better.
Yeah.
There we go. So the one on the right is kind of the top. So that helps us. And what's nice is you just start typing in the information, and then there's an advanced key, and it goes much quicker. And at first, some people had some hesitancy because they said, well, I like writing it in pen. And then one of my field service guys, he wasn't using the app. He wanted to use paper. We went up on a roof to look at about 15 exhaust fans, and it started raining. We're in Texas, and it rains intermittently all the time. And I watched all the ink just start to get destroyed. And I just looked at him and I said, aren't you lucky that I have the iPad and I've been following behind you, that I've been doing the digital form? So that's what makes it nice, is that it has it has a lot of resistance to getting lost or getting ruined. The other thing is that as soon as we are done with the form, it immediately sends it out. So our iPads have cell phone connection. So it saves it on the iPad, but also sends it back to our cloud very quickly. So, all right. Well, for us, first thing is it's nice to get it off of paper because we can actually look it up quickly. So that's been a huge help. It also, our clients are really thrilled because then they go, oh, you have this information on yourself? Boy, we'd like it. And so the next step for them would be working with Unvired to take these forms and have it imported to SAP. And the vast majority of our clients use SAP. So having Unvired being an SAP partner and knowing what it takes to take a digital form and put that into a program like SAP makes it an even smoother situation and a better choice for us and for our clients. So, and then having this information helps us make better diagnosis of what the frequencies are telling us. So it helps us understand what's going on with the machine. So that it helps us make us a better resource for diagnosing problems, so our plant that doesn't have unplanned failures. So
great, thanks, Karl. So this is really helpful. So what I'm going to do is we are now going to turn it over to Srini. So I'm going to hand it over to you.
Hey, thanks, Alok and Karl. All right, so I'm just going to take a couple of minutes on the slides, and then I'll straight away jump into the demo, and I'll walk you through the form that Karl was talking about and how we can quickly design something like that and then stage it on the cloud. So the TurboForm solution itself consists of multiple pieces, but bundled into two applications. One is the apps builder, which an administrator or a consultant uses to basically design the forms and work with the endpoints in that form, where the data has to get submitted. Does it go to SAP or just a database? And the second part of it is a forms application, which is basically what Karl was showing in his slides, and that's something that you use to actually collect the data, right? This is something that you use in the field. It's available on the iPad, iPhone, Android, and Windows tablets, and works completely offline. So this is the Turbo Apps Builder, like I mentioned. It's basically a no-code UI builder. It's a drag and drop interface that I will show you. And then it has a number of standard components you can use. We have additional components which we will walk through, like maybe a barcode reader, things like that. So you can use your mobile device to basically scan data. And it also comes with the Forms application, which, like I said, is cross-platform, works on iOS, Android, Windows, and of course, online on web. Has this great feature where you can start a form, fill in some data using the browser at your office, gets downloaded to the device, and then you can continue working on that in the field, where maybe you even don't have connectivity with whatever data is already stored, right? And once you finish up, you can just submit it, and when connectivity is restored, it automatically gets sent to the cloud, and then on to whatever is the final destination, be it SAP or SharePoint or whatever. There's also built-in reporting and analytics. So we do have a reporting engine that allows you to flexibly extract data and convert into CSVs or others for maybe you want to do an analysis further in your Power BI or something. There's also a built-in dashboarding that we've integrated that allows you to have quick dashboards built in a couple of hours, for example, and helps you to get insights directly without much of an effort from the data you've already collected. So let me jump into the demo. I'm going to start with the Unvired sandbox. So I can show you one of the simple standard dashboards that we have, and then I will move to the FPA tenant so that I can show you the form that we were speaking about. So here's a simple standard dashboard, basically gives you a quick idea as a manager on how your team is performing, forms in progress or completed. Forms can be grouped into categories, right? And you can have inspections, you can have permits, you can have master data like machine data that you're collecting, etc. So they go into different categories, and then you can see how these categories are being utilized. You can look at the forms within each of those categories. So you have a drill down that allows you to check how forms are being used. And you can also monitor the users who are actually working on your system and submitting data, right? So it gives you a very quick snapshot. And the system also allows you to design your specific dashboard so that you can also have insights from data that you're collecting, right? So let me jump into the FPA, the Failure Prevention Associates tenant. So what you're seeing here is basically a list of forms. So this is a sandbox system. We just have a couple of them. I'm going to jump into the machine data sheet. What we're going to see is how the form that Karl was mentioning, right? The Excel that they actually gave us, and how that's translated into a digital form. Now, one of the key things when you look at a digital form, and that's where the solution really shines, is once you design the form, it's automatically responsive, right? So it works on an iPad, works on an iPhone. You don't really need to change anything in the form. So how do we do that? We give you a flexible grid where you can basically lay out all the components that you want to, and they automatically align, like I said, depending on the form factor. Adding fields, for example, let's say you figure out that, okay, you have a set of attributes out here, and you want to collect an additional, maybe a text field. So it's as simple as dragging, dropping it, and then you can basically label it. Let's say I just call it additional data. And there are some built-in validations which depend on the type of field you're adding, right? So it could be that, hey, this is a mandatory field, so you want your users to actually fill that. Or you could say what the length is, the minimum you need, the maximum you need, so on and so forth, right? You could also add number fields, in which case, the validation becomes context sensitive. So it'll ask you what's the minimum or the maximum value that you want to assign. And additionally, you could also have conditional inputs, right? And that's where data collection on the field becomes easier when compared to paper, because in paper, you as a user need to judge, whether you need to fill a particular field or not, whereas in this particular case, the system can actually prompt you. And that conditional layouting can be done fairly simple by using the additional conditional logic in terms of, when do you want a specific component to display? For example, when you want this to be set maybe to 1, things like that are fairly simple, right? And then let me quickly jump to this. You have additional components like what I mentioned, a barcode scanner. So you can add that. And when you actually utilize the form in the field and you tap on the icon, the camera opens up, scans a 2D or a QR barcode, and then brings that data in. The form doesn't stop only at bringing the data in. You could also, for example, query a database in the backend, fetch additional information on attributes, and then be able to utilize them in the form. You have what we call a smart ID. It allows you to generate a unique identifier for each of the forms that you're submitting. And lastly, I think the important thing is what we have is a data grid. It allows you to, for example, when you do an inspection, capture various attributes which might be a fixed number is not known. So you might be adding 1, 2, 3, or 10 observations depending on how many are actually being captured in the field. So once you've designed your form and you're happy with that, you can go ahead and just test it. And what you're seeing is how it would render in a web browser. And on the tab or on the phone, it would automatically align to kind of make that responsive, right? So you have all kinds of controls out here. And if you're using a desktop, for example, and you want to capture signatures, you can just click to sign. Or if you're utilizing something which is on a touch-enabled device, you could also sign. This is what Karl was referring, where you're able to actually attach files or just use the camera. and then be able to capture pictures that you might want to have, right? Now, once you're happy with the form, just go ahead and then publish it. And the forms are now available on the device for people to work with. So that's basically what I wanted to cover. The other additional topic, of course, is what we call as workflows. Suffice to say that it's a no-code app builder that allows you to take the data that is collected and submitted into, of course, the cloud database, which is where we stage all the data. But it also allows you to take it with, without writing any code, into an SAP or maybe a different system like a SharePoint or any other system that you want to integrate with. So the capability to do that is available without having to write any code there. So I'm going to stop there. And Alok, I think we have probably a few minutes left for the question.
Yes, so I see some questions in the chat session. So I think, Karl, I guess this is a question maybe you can answer. How long did it take you to implement these forms? So do you want to quickly answer that?
It took about a week and a half to get it rolling. And then we went out into the field and started using it. We needed some education, which took maybe an hour on how to use the form and how to use the interface. So it was very rapid to get the form from concept and agreement to getting it up and running. And then after that, it just took, really all of that time was really us, because we still have our jobs that we were doing. So Unvired was fantastic on getting it back within the next day. And then we would be busy for 2 or 3 days before we got back to it.
Okay, good, great. So yeah, less than a week. And there's a related question here. Also, I'm reading here, how long does it take to design these forms? So, so before I answer that, I guess something that we want to tell you is that these forms can also be designed by your business users. You do not need to come to Unvired. And our customers have been taking typically between 3 and 4 hours to design a typical form. So, it takes no more than 4 hours. So I think that was another question that came up. And here there's another question is, can you take actions from these forms? Yes, absolutely. So we have some customers who, if they are doing an inspection and if they notice, something is broken, they can create a notification in SAP or in any CMMS system, for example. And Karl, I think you also were mentioning that there may be some actions you may want to take, right? So I don't know, do you have any action you have in mind from the form, sending some data back or triggering any action items for your technicians?
For us, the action item, no, there wasn't really on this particular form. We've looked at having some other forms, a criticality form to help us when we go and do an inspection. So we're looking at some more enhancements to this form. But as far as, for me, the nice thing was just the ability to now go, okay, now we have this data, how can we leverage it? We've got a pool of data. How can we do some analytics on it to help us do a better job? And that's something that's exciting and new. And I'm not sure where we're going with it yet, but to have the potential to say, let's look at this data and get some value out of it, I think is pretty cool.
Okay, and then we have some questions from James. So Srini, I think you take them. One of the questions is, do you have multi-select checkboxes?
Right. So I guess when you look at the drop-down that I was talking about earlier, that does allow you to select multiple items. You could also set up conditions to say, what are those items that are allowed, etc. You can also add items on the fly.
Okay, thanks. The other question is, can the form automatically adjust to fit the device display size? Yes, adjust to the form factor. The question is, are we using React? I don't think we are using React, Srini, right?
No, we don't use React. We're basically using vanilla web technologies. And, in order to make sure that there are no dependencies when it comes to the responsive nature, right? And also making it available on, all form factors, all devices offline. So.
Right. So it is responsive. And then there's another question. Can we handle shift handoffs if the task takes longer than one shift? Yes, I can answer that, James. We can handle that. Let's see.
In fact, just to add to what you said, Alok, we have a workflow that's built in, which is basically what we call as a shift handoff. So let's say your first crew or team works on that, they can actually hand it off to the next team. A copy of the form is made and then forwarded to them. So they actually work on that copy. So you also have a log of every shift, the activities that have been completed. and what has been handed off. So you actually have an audit point to say X was done, handed off, then the other team worked on Y, so on and so forth, until the shift completes. And this can span days or even weeks or months.
Yes, in fact, shift handover is one of the use cases.
Correct.
The other question is, what are some of the use cases? So yeah, we've got customers using this for, say work permits, lockout, tagout, asset inspections, checklists, inventory movements, safety observations. So the use cases are very, very varied. Data collection, as Karl talked about. I see one more question here. Can you do analytics in Power BI instead of the Unvired analytics? Absolutely. The data can be extracted and used in any analytics platform of your choice, including Power BI. So, you can slice and dice as much as you want with your favorite tool. And so, Karl, I would really like to thank you for giving us your time and sharing your experience. Big thank you to all the attendees. We will be sending you the slides, by tomorrow, a recording of the webinar also. And just to remind everyone, you do have the free POC offer, and we have special pricing. So we'll follow up with you and hoping that some of you take us up on our POC offer. With that, I think we would like to close the webinar. And once again, thanks to everyone. Goodbye.